Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show.live. We have quite a room already going in here. Thank you guys for joining us today. For those of you that regularly join us, you know the show.live comes to you on Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific, where we have weekly conversations with fascinating people disrupting industries and influencing change. And today is no different. Jay, using the selfies. Thank you. For those of you not familiar with Huzza, we have a selfie option here where you can click on selfies, send us just a small snapshot like Jay just did, give us a thumbs up, give us a wave. We would love to see who is actually in our room today. So Sue, great to be here. Amazing, amazing list. And we have a pretty amazing lineup today. So for those of you that don't know, if you're here for Peter Shankman, he will be here in November. He had to reschedule due to a last minute change, but it actually worked out really well because today is Distracted Driving Awareness Day, and StopDD.today has sponsored this show to bring you 1 hour of talking about how we can collectively come together as a community and stop distracted driving. And so while you will be hearing some from my wonderful co-host Mitch and the efforts that he has made, we will also be hearing from two fascinating women. Jenny Q, some of you might know her as Jennifer Quinn. She hosts the Jenny Q show. I was about to go back to the Daily Q on our blab time. The Jenny Q show, she's going to come on and give her experience with distracted driving. And then, of course, we also have Kelly Wallace from CNN, who has done significant research in this area. But enough about the show. Let's take a moment here. Let me introduce my amazing co-host, Mr. Mitch Jackson. Mitch, how's it going? How was the weekend? How was the week's going? Well for you, huh?
It's going fantastic, and
Good.
You did a great job of dragging out the intro because we were trying to, behind the scenes, get this going on Facebook Live too, and we're still working on it. But you know what?
Okay.
My weekend was great, Jennifer. You know, more soccer, more drone flying, getting ready for Distracted Driving Awareness Day, which is today, October 5th.
Right.
We've got so much going on in town, and it's just been crazy, and it's been crazy fun. And I'm really excited about everybody joining us today, supporting Distracted Driving Awareness, supporting today's events, everyone driving around town, flying their blue ribbons on their cars and sharing it on social with hashtag StopDD. It's so cool. It's heartwarming. And this morning at Rotary, we talked about this and we shared how exciting all of our interactors are really across the country and across the world with participating in this event, starting Distracted Driving Awareness Day. That was the interactors' idea, and just watching it take off. So this is fun. I'm glad everyone's here, and it's always good to see you every Wednesday afternoon, 1 p.m. my time, 4 o'clock Eastern time.
Right, closing out the day here on the East Coast. So you guys, this is an amazing, amazing group. Don't forget to send us in some of those selfies. Let us see who you are. Also, make sure that you are filling up our Q&A queue. So that way, if you have any questions, whether you already want to ask them to Mitch or to Kelly or to Jenny Q, that you go ahead and get those in the queue so I can make sure we ask them throughout the show. But yeah, today, and Mitch, today, I have been super proud to see our friends and also people that I personally don't know sharing out the message of stop distracted driving, but also just that message that today is Distracted Driving Awareness Day. And while, certainly for many of us kind of already in this community, we're more mindful, we're more aware of it. Today might be the first time someone hears this message, and it might be the first time they become more mindful of what they're doing behind the wheel, or maybe that a child is watching their actions and their habits. So I'm excited to hear, and certainly today we're not going to be discussing, or throwing kind of any blame. We don't want anyone to feel guilty because all of us have already admitted that we at one point or another have done this, and it's a constant struggle. So certainly no one should feel guilty here in the room, but maybe just becoming a little bit more aware of how you can drive safer, how you can set a better example for the people that are watching you drive.
Absolutely. And, I'd like to give a special shout out to Sue Sheff, who's here joining us today. Sue actually put us in touch with Kelly Wallace, and Sue's been a strong advocate with so many online safety protocols, so many online causes that protect all of us. And when she and I spoke about the distracted driving campaign, Sue was all in. So special kudos to Sue Chef and everything that she's doing. Everybody follows Sue. She's doing good stuff. And I know that she's dealing with the hurricane situation right now. So we're wishing Sue and her family nothing but safety and good thoughts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. That hurricane, it looks like it's coming directly for them. Fortunately, North Carolina got some good news that we may be out of harm's way. But I mean, certainly we'll see. Hurricanes can change very quickly. But yeah, Sue, we're thinking of you. Most certainly. Now, Jay has asked a question in the Q&A about where we can find reminders to send out and tweet, etc. And Jay, I'm assuming, are you talking about the actual like where can you tweet from within the show? If you just clarify that for me, that way we can better understand. So, Mitch, were we able to get Facebook Live going?
I don't think we were.
Okay.
It is in beta, and I will try periodically throughout the course of the show. But you know what's really exciting is I've got you, we've got this audience, and we've got Kelly who would like to join us on the show. You know, we've got some great sponsors with respect to the show.live. And today, the Interact Clubs of Orange County, California in Rotary District 5320 are one of our sponsors for today's show for obvious reasons. And I tip my hats to these kids. They're 12 to 18 years old. Most of them are middle school and high school age. And they're doing so many cool things with respect to community service at the local, national, and international levels. So thank you, Interactors. Thank you for supporting today's show. And thank you for all that you're doing to help raise awareness as to the dangers of distracted driving.
Absolutely. And also a special shout out to our sponsor, Archon Mounts. Archon does a tremendous job. Not only do they sell devices that you can use in your car to make sure that you are offering a hands-free driving experience, but they truly promote making sure that you are not distracted by your phone while driving. So including not, messing with the phone while you're driving, making sure the GPS is in a safe place and in a place where you can still clearly see the road. So Archon Mounts, and specifically Aaron over at Archon Mounts, doing some tremendous things to further this cause as well. So thank you, Archon Mounts, for your continued support. One of our original sponsors, continued support of the show.live. So, and I know that's that's what I use in my car. So, and speaking of cars, I know we mentioned this last week, but let's talk about it one more time this week. We're seeing blue ribbons, Mitch. Can you tell us what those blue ribbons mean?
I can, and while I'm doing that, I've just got a message from Kelly. I believe she is here. Kelly, if you would please just say hi using the chat so we can find you, and we will be clicking. Okay, there you are. We'll bring you in just a couple of minutes. It's so good to have you here. But what the Interactors wanted to do was help raise awareness as to the dangers of distracted driving. April is the official Distracted Driving Awareness Month. What the kids pointed out to me, or what the students, the young adults pointed out to me, and let's get that straight, is that distracted driving is a problem that we all have to face and deal with 365 days a year. They looked at the calendar and they determined that October 5th, today, would be a great day to start recognizing as Distracted Driving Awareness Day because it's before the holidays. And so by flying the blue ribbons safely on vehicles, on skateboards, on surfboards, on the hovercraft that you see people, rolling around on, not me, but the young bucks, the guys and gals, they're starting conversations. And people are saying, what's that blue ribbon all about? And so now what's happening is all around town, we've got these blue ribbons, frankly, all across the country. And so that's what it's all about. And it's just simply to start a conversation and to attract attention to the distracted driving. We have one more potential guest today, just so you know. We have Police Officer Mike Byers.
Yay!
He's out on the streets right now with his laptop. He's on distracted driving enforcement patrol. So he's going to try to join us around 1:20, 1:30. Hopefully get to meet Kelly and anybody else that's on the show, Jenny Q, and talk to us a little bit about what he's done today as a police officer, through a police officer's eyes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite Kelly to the broadcast.
Yeah.
And Kelly, you're going to see a link. Just click on the link, and as you come in, I will give you a short but proper introduction. And let's just make sure it works. This is so cool. I'm so excited. While Kelly's clicking in, let me just introduce her.
Hey.
Kelly Wallace. Hey, Kelly Wallace is an award-winning digital journalist, television correspondent, digital correspondent, and editor-at-large for CNN, one of my favorite stations.
Well, thank you.
In-depth articles, socially sourced stories, and original web videos for CNN's digital health, wellness, and parenting are second to none. Kelly's here today because of the amazing series, the amazing documentary she did on distracted driving. Thank you, Sue Chef, for putting us together.
Yes.
Kelly, thank you for all that you've done. And it's great to see you here today. What got you interested in doing the distracted driving series for CNN?
Well, I got interested in it just basically like everyone else. Everywhere I would go when I would drive, I would see people using their devices. And I couldn't get it. I mean, I would point, I have two girls, and I would sort of say to them, look, they're driving with their phones, right? And it became sort of a thing. And then I think as I learned a little bit more about the issue and how many lives are lost, and I was really captivated by those stories. And I think the addictive nature of the devices, how people know it's bad, it's a bad thing to do, it's dangerous, and they still do it. So I think I think it was all those factors where I am thankfully a commitment from CNN where we really wanted to go deep on a subject that really impacts everyone. And I think this was a topic that everyone could relate to for sure.
And so as you were doing your study and as you were covering this topic, I mean, quite a broad topic, as I'm sure we'll go into, anything that specifically surprised you as you were going through your research?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think part of it is that addictive nature. Now, we use the word addiction, right? So to be technically described as an addiction, I don't think everybody falls into that category. But that sense of how it's not just when you hear the ping or the ding or whatever term you want to use, it's the anticipation of that people are so drawn to it, and that even people after they hear, I interviewed a woman, and I think a lot of people really reacted to her story. Here was a mom of two, good person, cares about her family. She's driving on a road. She looks down because that ding comes in. She doesn't text and drive. She said she would pull over. She pulled over to text, gets back on the road, hears the ping, looks down, and then crashes into a tractor and kills a grandfather and a father. And she has to live with that for the rest of her life. But one of the stories she told me is all of her friends in her community know what happened. And she told a story of how they were coming home from one of her children's games, and her friend was driving behind her and texted her from the steering wheel, driving. And so here is somebody who knows what happened when her dear friend had this horrible, horrible experience, and she still does it. And she called her, Laura called her on it and said, I know, I need to stop. So I think it's that even when people know it's bad and dangerous, they still can't stop doing it. That's a big concern.
It's so addictive. And I think once people start hearing the numbers, once people start, can you hear me, Jen?
Yes.
Is my microphone on? And once people start listening to the statistics, when you're texting and driving, you're increasing your chances of ending up in a collision fourfold. When you're talking with a cell phone, when you're texting, it's actually 8 times greater. I think if you're using social media, you're engaging, you're live streaming, it's probably even greater than texting. And people aren't aware of this, but it's hard for people to put their phone away and turn their phone off when they turn their vehicle on. Kelly, with all the people that you've come into contact with, whether it's a victim, whether it's somebody, a police officer that you've interviewed, maybe a local politician thinking about changing the laws of their city, state, or whatever, what's the biggest objective challenge that you see people have with participating as a distracted driver? I mean, why is it still happening?
Well, I think it gets back to, the conversation we were just all having before, sort of that addictive nature. People can't stop. And that's why, and I'm sure you've had these conversations, many people think it's ultimately going to have to come down to technology, some form of technology that basically doesn't allow the phone to work in terms of you can't access social media or texting or email while driving. The textilizer, right? I did a story on that. It's a movement. It won't stop distracted driving, but some people think until more people are charged with distracted driving, prosecuted, longer sentences for distracted driving, then until that we won't see changes. And you hear a lot of similarity with drinking and driving.
Right.
The stigma right now today, if someone says, hey, I'm going to go have 10 shots of tequila and get behind the wheel, people would say, you're a moron, you're a jerk. No one does that. But if someone says, hey, I'm going to play Pokemon Go while I'm driving over to my girlfriend's house or boyfriend's house, there's not the same stigma. And so the thinking is that if more people are caught doing it, face punishment, face penalty, more people realize that there are real consequences, and that's all of that brings together the stigma, because really the stigma is just not there. I think it should be. I think there's the stigma, but I don't think overall people think of it in that same way. And until we get to that point, we might not see real behavioral change.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that, like, as far as, at least from the way I kind of see it, it seems to me the way some of these cases or situations are reported, where we always hear about the driver was allegedly using their phone, right, and there's typically not as much follow-up in some of those news reports as there would be with a drunk driving accident, because typically we can get some faster results with drunk driving and the breathalyzers, blood test, whatever it might be. So do you feel like maybe that's part of the issue as far as kind of the public awareness of it, where we don't circle back in the news to saying like, oh yeah, this person was playing Pokemon Go?
It's such a key point, Jen. I think that's absolutely right, because the person, Ben Lieberman here in New York State, who's really trying to push New York to take a measure, pass a law where it would basically allow law enforcement to use this device called the textilizer. He said that if you had a crash and somebody they believed was drinking, they would immediately, as you said, use the breathalyzer, have questioning. But if somebody thinks that they were using a phone, it's going to take a certain kind of law enforcement officer who's aware, who knows what to look for, also has the challenge of privacy. Someone could say, hey, what are you looking at? You should not be looking at my phone. I'm not going to give you my phone. I drifted away. I wasn't using my phone. So unless you have a device and you have some training on how to use it, it's going to be very hard for follow-up. And Ben Lieberman tells the story. His son, there's one tragedy after another. His son was in the back seat, driving with friends. It was in the morning. They had just finished their freshman year of college. They were all going to a job. And the driver, his friend in the front, I guess crossed over the median and crashed. And sadly, Ben Lieberman's son was killed. And when he was really trying to do a search, because they didn't really look at the phone, they didn't do anything. And when he was trying to get subpoena records, etc., he found that the phone was still in the car, at a place. It was never looked at. So part of it is just the challenge, it's the training, and having the devices to use so that you can see if someone is using some kind of touch screen technology while they're behind the wheel, to see if that is the cause of the crash.
Wow.
It's such a new issue that has such old roots. As you mentioned, Kelly, it's very similar to what drunk driving was 30 years ago. And, with technology changing, I see things changing quickly. I think what a lot of people need to realize is that, every year 4,000 to 6,000 people are killed because of distracted driving. Anywhere from 400,000 to 600,000 people are injured. To put those numbers into perspective, 290,000 people a year are injured by drunk drivers. A lot of experts think the distracted driving numbers are actually higher than what are being reported, but as we just talked about, they're actually not being determined by investigative agencies and officers. Do you see in your preparing your story for CNN, Kelly, as far as lawmakers, as far as police officers, as far as people wanting to change the laws so that we can start protecting innocent people from careless, self-centered, and reckless distracted drivers, are they trying to change the laws from what you've seen to protect our citizens?
I mean, I think they are. New York is one example, right? But there's tremendous battles. There's a tremendous fight when it comes to privacy. So you have many advocates who say, if you are going to allow law enforcement officer A to seize my phone after a crash, what is that officer going to look at? What information will that officer be able to obtain? So there's a big concern there. But one thing and you can see why there's a hope here for more. When you've seen some pilot programs around the country, I think Connecticut has done, I mean, they've happened all across the country, where basically what they're doing, almost as if what we've seen for drunk driving, they announce there are going to be checkpoints, right? So they announce in the community there are going to be texting and driving checkpoints. And here's the thing, people don't want to charge people with texting and driving, right? The goal isn't to have 1,000 citations by the end of the weekend. The goal is to deter the behavior. And what they have found is it does. When they have a very publicized announcement that there will be checkpoints, they are able to see a reduction. I'm not sure, of course, how they measure that, but they're able to see a reduction in the use of devices while behind the wheel. And the hope is that will just encourage people to think again and again when they get behind the wheel, even when there aren't checkpoints. So I think there's a lot of interest. I mean, law enforcement would love to have more resources and more, better ways to deal with this. They're just big challenges in terms of what we as a society want to allow and when we're going to allow it.
Quick follow-up. So based upon your investigative reporting and the series that you did, are you encouraged about the direction that we're going to fix this problem, or do you see this problem growing exponentially worse at a very fast pace?
Right. I'm not dodging, but can I say I'm both? I mean, I was blown away by the response, mainly online. And you know this from the work you've been doing. People responded to it in a bigger way than pretty much any story I've done since I've been here at CNN. And really? I think it's because people see it, people do it, people don't always realize how dangerous it is. And I think we all know the importance of personal narratives. When you hear those personal stories and how lives are forever changed because of Facebook post, right, or a text. I mean, it's crazy. But on the flip side, the numbers are just going to keep going up. I mean, we are seeing, the number of crashes, that's gone up. Our cars are safer, all these other things, and yet we're seeing the numbers go up, and I feel that they're going to keep going up as the device, right? And we use it for everything. But I will say that I'm looking at the younger generation, my kids and maybe tweens and teens who've sort of grown up in a way, understanding or hearing about the dangers. I'm heartened. I mean, I think I'm definitely encouraged that they will already be thinking in a different way than maybe most of us have been thinking when we get behind the wheel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I know our chat has kind of continued to, we have so much conversation going on right now. Like I can't even keep up with everything, but it's awesome. I'm going to post again the CNN link to the driving while distracted collection. So you guys can see that right there. And Kelly, I've seen this come up a couple of times, both in the chat and as well as Ivan Reichland asked this question as well. He's saying, will driverless vehicles be the answer to distracted driving? I know Nick Rishwain also made the same suggestion. Yes. What's your take there on the driverless vehicles?
Yes, I mean, I think that's such a great point. And from the experts I talked to when we were sort of focusing on technology, ultimately, that sense of self-driving cars will remove the issue, right? You can be as distracted as you want if you are in a self-driving car, although that raises questions about, how present you're going to be if something goes wrong. But I think the thinking is that is probably going to be a way to really curtail the problem, but that we're not there yet. I mean, are we 5 years away? Are we fewer? Are we longer when it comes to passenger vehicles? It really depends, but that is definitely a belief that could help reduce the problem.
Kelly, I wanted to bring in Officer Mike Byers. He's out actually at work right now, and he's only got a couple of minutes. Mike, Kelly Wallace, Mike Byers.
Hi, Mike. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Kelly. How are you? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
We can. So how's it going with the Distracted Driving Enforcement Day?
Well, it's interesting. I was in the middle of center median and standing behind a light pole, and it was great watching people come up to stop signs, and you kind of saw this, like, when there's something on your peripheral, and I would see, hi, and as far but I didn't see any, of course. That's how it works in my profession. I didn't see any at that time, but we've got a lot of officers out there, a lot of the adjoining cities really pushing this. This is big. This is a big issue. I'll tell you what I'm starting to get frustrated about is I want to go to Best Buy and buy cameras and like put cameras on all four sides of my vehicle so that I can record, so I can show people this is crazy how much people are not listening. Yeah. And it's just it's frustrating for us as law enforcement. Yesterday, stopped at a red light. I looked to the left, and then she drops the phone, right? And so I pulled her over, and I go, "What? You don't understand." And here she was a foster parent, and she had the child in the back seat. And I took this opportunity to do some good, positive messaging, but I was frustrated right in front of me. I just want people to just start realizing how important it is and how passionate we are, especially in law enforcement. And I'll tell you right now, I wish I could spin my camera around so you could see all the stuff in my police car. I'm wearing headsets to talk on the phone. I've got, radios. I got all types of stuff. So I want everybody to know too. And if you're a law enforcement officer out there or a firefighter or EMT operating this emergency equipment, we have double the responsibility to be careful with the equipment that we're using, even though we're exempted by the law to use our equipment. But it is, it's distracted driving. We have to be very cautious. And I've been kind of waiting for tweets or people to snap back at me and say, well, what about you? So yes, again, we're exempt from it. We do have a lot of things we have to do. But I'm not saying that we're, I guess some police officers say, well, we're specially trained. Well, I don't care what kind of training you have. You have to be very safety conscious about what you're doing. So
absolutely.
Hey, Mike, before I bounce you back out of every 10 vehicles that you see while you're patrolling, how many of those vehicles do you see someone that's participating as a distracted driver?
Yeah, out of 10, I would put it. That's the I'd put it at 4 out of 10.
40%.
Yeah, that's just me throwing a number, visualizing that. And sometimes I can't get to them. I'm in a patrol car. That's the other thing. Sometimes people look at me kind of like, aren't you going to do something? You have to remember, I don't want to create a collision to go after a violator.
Right.
So sometimes that's something we have to contend with.
Right.
So Mike and I are going to talk more about this tomorrow on a show that we have. It's lawandorder.live. We're going to talk about from the arrest, Kelly, for a distracted driver, from arrest and booking all the way through the legal system and conviction, kind of like the hard facts of what people really need to know. Mike, really appreciate you taking time out from protecting and serving and joining us today. I appreciate it.
No worries. I called dispatch and I said, hey, I'm going to take my lunch out in the field right now. And so they think I'm eating some donuts or whatever, but I'm not. And, Kelly, when I first came on, I thought I caught you. I'm not sure what you were saying, but our goal in law enforcement is not to write many tickets as possible. I'll be honest with you. I don't like writing tickets. And the reason why is because I'm human. And if I'm going to write a citation, I have to be dang well sure it's a safety violation. It was blatant, outright, and something I probably haven't done or don't do. So I don't want to be hypocritical. And I understand we all make mistakes.
Yes.
So our intention is not to write citation. Everybody says, well, what's the quota? The quota is a big fallacy. There is no, it's a federal, it's a violation of federal law to have a quota. But here's what you have to remember, and all of our viewers that are tuned in. If you're employed and your employer tells you that part of your job description is to enforce traffic laws, just like somebody's job is to stock the shelves. If you don't stock the shelves, how long do you think you'll be employed for if you're not doing your job? And part of traffic education, traffic safety, traffic enforcement is writing citations. Now, I'll give you this. Sometimes I find it's better to educate the public. It's a win-win for everybody. It helps the person because obviously they're not getting a hefty fine. They're getting the bejesus scared out of them. And sometimes I'll even hold them there for some extra time and do some education And it's also a win for law enforcement, for somebody to go, hey, well, I guess these cops aren't that bad. They really do care, and that's the whole thing. I'll leave you guys with that, and thanks for doing this, Mitch. Jen Hoverstead, I tried to get a hold of you earlier, but we'll message each other or whatever.
Okay, perfect. Yes, sorry, I've been away from my computer this afternoon, but yes, this afternoon.
Thanks, Officer Byers.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Kelly,
Thanks, Officer. Great to meet you. Thanks for the work you're doing.
That's Social Cop on Twitter, everyone. Yeah, Mike's doing good stuff, and they're building bonds and connections with their community through social media. It's very smart, I think, what they're doing.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead,
sorry, I was going to follow up on some of the things that Mike was saying. First of all, for those of you just joining us, we have Kelly Wallace here from CNN, and we are talking about the research that she has done as part of the Driving While Distracted series with CNN. And of course, today we are here to become more mindful of all of our actions and to find even just small ways that we can change and become less distracted while driving. So, Kelly, tell me, as far as what laws you've seen are in place. I know this is something that Jeanette asked in our Q&A. She says, how many states actually have laws against driving while distracted or using phones? And what kind of penalties do we see from state to state?
It's a great question. I think the numbers 46 states plus the District of Columbia have laws where it's against the law to text and drive. And I think it's 14 states plus the District of Columbia where it's against the law to be using a handheld device. You can't even be, a hands-free device, excuse me. You just can't even use a hands-free device. That gets to the thinking that even talking on the phone with a speaker is distracting, which is, science does show that. But then in terms of the penalties, it could be as small as, less than a parking ticket. I think South Carolina, it's about $25 for texting and driving. A place like New York, it can be much steeper. You can lose some points on your license, which we know is important for insurance rates. Fines could be, a couple of $100s. Still, though, many would say not very strong. The case of Laura in our series, and she was in Iowa, and she drove distracted. She admitted it. As soon as the police pulled up, she said she was looking at her phone, admitted it. There was not a challenge there. But there weren't really laws in place. She only got 14 days in jail. And many people, when they heard that in terms of response to the story, they felt like that was such a small amount of time. I will say, though, part of it is she's doing community service. She's doing 200 plus hours of community service, going around to schools and driver's education programs to talk about her story. And she said every hour she does that is exhausting and draining, and as you can imagine. So in a way, doing 200 plus hours of community service, which is going to take a long time, is almost a bigger penalty for her than even spending 3 months in jail. So sometimes we have to sort of realize community service, if done and if it has a real impact on the person, and if it does wider good, could even be better or as good as jail time. So again, the penalties really vary, and many people think we need to have tougher penalties before we see a big change.
I'm one of them. Because I see what happens to the clients on the other side of my desk. This is a public document, and just along the lines of what you just talked about, Kelly, it's a case I'm working on right now. This is what a wrongful death lawsuit looks like, everybody. When you have a distracted driver that is speeding and is reckless and ends up killing a grandmother, a 2-year-old granddaughter, and severely injures 2 other people in the vehicle, each with over $300,000 to $400,000 in medical bills. He's being prosecuted for 2 counts of murder. His life is done. Okay? And when they're done on the criminal case, that's when we step in on the civil case.
Right.
And it's a tragedy all the way around. But Kelly, with this person, he has priors. He has priors of speeding down the 405 freeway at 108 miles an hour, live streaming on Periscope, the speed on his speedometer, up at the traffic, the speed on his speedometer. So, it's just sad all the way around. I wish something like this had never happened. Let me back up a second and ask you a question. Everybody that you spoke to and the people that you came across who witnessed accidents or have somebody in their family that tragically is a victim of distracted driving, how important is it, do you feel, that we have to lead by example? In other words, if you're an older sibling, by not distracted driving, by putting your phone away, you're telling your little brother or sister that's the way to conduct yourself. As a mother or a father, if you put your phone away when you're driving, you talk to your kids, there's a good chance that they're not going to develop a bad habit as if they saw you doing it all the time. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, another great question. We know our kids watch everything we do. They mimic us. They follow in our footsteps in a lot of ways. And on this issue, what was so, I think this was, Jen, going back to the question about what surprised you, this was pretty surprising. I believe in one of the surveys, 56% of parents said that they check their phones while driving. And often they have teenagers or younger kids in the car. And that is a big problem. You can't tell your teen or tween, well, your teen, don't go, use your phone while driving and then be checking Facebook and posting on Twitter, Snapchat, what have you. So I think it's a very, very big point. And I think I've been hearing anecdotally when, again, response to the stories, I've heard from some friends, some others who will say that their kids are the ones who say, Mom, I remember I was interviewing some Long Island high school students who said they're the ones who tell their mom and dad, Mom, off the phone, we're in the car, or you've got my 5-year-old sister. So parents need to, and other adults need to do a better job of role modeling. And, I remember that at Long Island High School, this amazing teacher, he's probably the most beloved teacher at the school. He listened to this assembly. And then after I talked to him he said, you know what? I'm really ashamed of myself. I'm really embarrassed that I've done it. What kind of role model am I? I am a role model to these kids. And I'm doing it. And it really hit him hard that we as adults need to do a better job of setting the right example for our kids.
I think it's very important.
Absolutely. Well, Kelly, we really appreciate you coming on today and sharing the information that you have gathered from the documentary. And certainly, I know now we can all go back, and for those of you not familiar, can now go back and look through that and see that information. If people have other questions for you, or maybe something comes up, where are you publicly where people can follow your work?
Sure. They can, either on Twitter at Kelly Wallace TV. I'm on Facebook as well, but they could also just email me at kelly.wallace@turner.com. I mean, I really, as I think you can tell, we care about this issue so much, and we hope to keep trying to do some stories to keep the conversation going down the road. And I'll make one funny aside. You don't ever have to worry about Kelly Wallace with distracted driving because, hey, I'm passionate about it, but because technology. So I'm so sorry that I was delayed. I was here and then I had a problem and I laughed because I said, that's what's so funny. I don't ever have to worry about distracted driving because I can't do, I can't even, I have to focus. I can't do two things at once. So I'm glad I ultimately managed to get to you after a little snap.
It was easy. It was easy. And Kelly, before you run, I want to introduce you to Jennifer Quinn. She's got the Jenny Q show on the internet. It's probably the internet's top live streaming variety show. And Jennifer's been a very strong advocate of, this distracted driving movement. And I thought it was only fitting that Jennifer join us today and say hi. And how you doing, Jennifer?
I'm doing great. Hi, Kelly. Nice to meet you.
Really nice to meet you.
Yeah,
that's great.
I love what I've been hearing today. Hello, Jen. Hello, Mitch. So great to see you as always.
It's so good to see you. Kelly, do you have just a couple of more minutes or do you have to
run? I sure do. No, that'd be great. I'm going to hang around.
One of the reasons I wanted to bring Jennifer on is she's not only a talent when it comes to live streaming, but she has a story about distracted driving. And I think by sharing stories, we can all, kind of appreciate that this is something that we're all dealing with on a daily basis. And Jennifer, I really appreciate you coming on today to share your story. If you're so inclined to do so.
Wouldn't that be funny?
I don't want to put you on the spot here.
That'd be funny if at this point I'm like, I'm just not feeling it.
I don't want to talk about it.
I'm not feeling it.
Change your mind.
No, I will gladly share this story because, and I might cry during it. Let's just get that out. But the thing is, the reason I'm glad to share this story is because I'm alive to do it, and it defies all logic that I am alive to do it. So I'll tell you briefly what happened. And this was even before smartphones. This was just a regular cell phone. I was on a business trip going through Santa Fe, New Mexico, on a, driving from Albuquerque back home to Colorado Springs. And I was going 79 miles an hour down the interstate, 4 miles over the legal, speed limit. A car cut me off, cut in front of me, but I was on the phone and it shortened my reaction time. I went to swerve to miss the car. I overcorrected and my car then rolled. It was a Ford Expedition. It rolled 3 or 4 times. And miraculously, I landed in the median. I didn't hit anybody else. And I did lose consciousness, and the next thing I remember was hearing a voice from the distance. And I woke up, and soon the next thing I know, there were all the first responders there, and they used the jaws of life and had me with a neck brace and a backboard. And I remember not just thinking, but saying over and over, "This is the thing you think that's never going to happen to you." Like I kept saying that over and over. And I want to tell you guys, it was serious. Like I couldn't remember what year it was. I couldn't remember who the president was. All those questions they ask you. I remember not knowing, and it was the scariest feeling. And I kept asking him, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? And of course they didn't have the answers, but somehow I spent the day in the ER and was discharged that night. With a concussion, with a closed head injury. I did definitely suffer, post-traumatic stress disorder for years. But the point is, it happened. Like it happened. I was just like that. I remember waking up that morning. The weather was amazing. I was on top of the world. I was killing it in business. I was, just had the world by the tail. And then boom, my life changed. And I want to share another thing that I don't think I've shared on live streaming before. While I was lying there in the ER, not knowing if I was going to walk again, I remember thinking that I was spending all of my time chasing the money and chasing the perfect body because I was working out like crazy. And I had little kids at home, and I was like, wow, this is a wake up call on so many levels. So now, Mitch, I'm pretty sure you were the first one to bring the distracted driving movement to my attention, or maybe it was Jason Clark back in the Blab days. But what happened now is, yes, I will talk about it. Yes, I will tell my story. And I am embarrassed to say this, but I'm not so embarrassed I won't say it. I'm still tempted every single day. And Kelly, it's what you said. It's the addiction. It's the compulsion. It's what's going on, And so it's movements like this. It's your group, Mitch, your Stop Distracted Driving. I've told you before, I keep my notifications on because I want notifications all the time. And every time I pull out of my garage, I remember that. I really do. So Mitch, you're doing some great work there. But I still can get 3 blocks away from the house and go, oh wait, I forgot to text. Right.
Hard.
So that's all. But and there's just one more thing I want to share. I have a friend who was in a serious car accident. Her husband died. Her son died. She ended up being a quadriplegic. And I sat with her one day and I said to her, Midge, I'm so sorry. And she looked me in the eyes. I'll never forget. And she said, Jennifer, there are worse things than dying. And so I think of that. I think of that when I think of this. We're all afraid of dying. No, there are so many worse things. And Mitch, you deal with it all the time.
That's why, I probably rubbed some people the wrong way online because I'm so adamant about this. And I'm getting an echo here. But, when you look at Joel Feldman, Kelly, Joe Feldman of enddd.org, and his 21-year-old daughter Casey was struck by a distracted driver while she was in a crosswalk.
I know.
And that's really what brought my attention to all of this. And it's just, once tragedy strikes, you can never, turn back the clock. But what you can do is, stand up, stand tall, be a leader, and help raise awareness, right? And that's kind of what we're all trying to do. And the challenge was doing it, Kelly, on social media with live streaming is how do you go about doing that? You're going to ruffle some feathers. You've got people that really their whole business model revolves around live streaming. And the more they live streaming in the car, the more money they generate. So they're not going to listen to you. And so it's a catch-22. And I've always told everybody, look, if it gets to the point where you reach out privately and you can't create change, just stop following somebody, just block them, just stop supporting what they're doing, and hope they don't drive down your street in your neighborhood while your kids are out front playing. Right. That's where it starts to get personal.
I know. And look at Jenny's story. And I think what people I've interviewed have said is anyone who thinks this isn't going to impact me is sorely mistaken, right? I mean, it could impact any of us the next time we get behind the wheel when someone else makes that decision. I know I drive. I remember when I lived, it's funny you mentioned New Mexico, Jenny. I was a reporter there for a couple of years. New Mexico, sadly, was often in the top level when it came to the number of deaths from drunk driving accidents. So it was a big issue. And I remember driving defensively. If I saw someone swerving, I thought, oh my gosh, that person is probably drinking and driving. Now, what do we all think when we see someone swerving or someone going very slow on the highway? Oh, that's what they're doing. Exactly. And we have to all be aware of that because that danger is real. So anyone who thinks this is sort of not in my backyard, Jenny, your story shows you it can happen to anyone.
Well, I think too, for people that think that if they hurt anybody, they'll only be hurting themselves. And I think it's clear today from the stories, especially Kelly, that you have shared, more often than not, or at least more often than what I hear, someone else gets hurt in the process of someone making this decision. While, fortunately for Jenny, her kids weren't in the car with her. No one else was there. She didn't hit any other cars. More often than not, we hear about other innocent people who are not actually the ones participating in the distracted driving being the ones that get hurt or killed because of it. And, I think too, you bring up a great point, Kelly, talking about, when you see other drivers, I live in a neighborhood where my street happens to be a cut through to two other rather busy roads. And I think every time someone comes down the street, man, I hope they're paying attention that I'm checking my mail. So that way they're not too close to the curb. And it's almost kind of sad that we have to think that way, but it's the reality is chances are if, 4 out of the 10, like, what Mike was saying, that statistic of people are driving while distracted, chances are someone just may not simply see you for that reason. So the awareness level has to be on top all the time.
And, Jen, you bring up a good point. Now, Kelly, I wonder if you came across it in your research. Is there a higher rate of distracted driving within a certain radius of your house? Because I know we're more comfortable, we're more relaxed.
Interesting.
It's a great question, Jenny. When I was working with this fabulous producer, Meredith Edwards, and when we were looking for stories to showcase the problem, we were finding a lot of these tragedies in rural communities. So Meredith was wondering, are there stats? Is it more likely to happen in a rural community because you have this sort of sense of comfort, there aren't a lot of cars around, you're lulled into this sort of, sense it's okay, where if you're on a busy highway in Manhattan or out in California, and we couldn't come across those numbers. I don't know if they exist, but it is interesting because it does seem to, it happens everywhere. I mean, I know it happens everywhere, but potentially the deep tragedies may often happen when you're on a quiet road and you think it's okay to look down at your phone or post on Facebook or whatever. Certainly we saw a number of tragedies that we came across in our reporting under those circumstances.
And aren't we all guilty of it? Sorry, Mitch. I mean, I'm just blown away. We're all guilty. We need each other to keep reminding ourselves,
This is a new issue, distracted driving with respect to technology and social and live streaming and really everything we're talking about, although it encompasses many different aspects of being distracted, right? Eating, taking care of your kids, whatever it might be. But I think it's through conversation, through awareness, through doing what we're doing right now. We've been on shows like this, Kelly, where I think maybe both Jennifer were on the show where people popped on and said, because of what we talked about, it's changed their conduct and how they're going to be driving. And that just means, that's what it's all about, right? One person at a time, but we can amplify that on social. What I'd like to do is just, respect your time, Kelly, and we're coming up to the top of the 50 minutes into the program. I want to thank you for taking time out and joining Jen and Mike and I today, and all of our wonderful guests on the show.live, and for all the work that you've done. And we've shared the link to your CNN series on distracted driving with our audiences on our other platforms. I encourage everyone, to take a look at the videos and share these videos with your family and friends. Don't lecture people about doing
Right.
it. Show them the stories. And I think
Yes.
Kelly's reporting will tell the story and send the message on your behalf in a very effective way. And just means the world to us that you stopped by today, Kelly.
Oh.
Keep doing all the good things that you're doing. Jen, anything to back that up?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the series, and really honestly at this point, especially what Mitch has created and now Kelly, what your research continues to back up, I feel like we're all starting like this giant digital accountability group, which is just
Yeah.
awesome. You know, it's we're all looking out for each other. And like Mitch said, there's no finger pointing here. We recognize that we all do it. And certainly the stories of others who it has so unfortunately happened to, those are really the powerful words that other people need to hear. So Kelly, thank you very much for the work you've done on this.
Oh, you guys are so generous. Thank you so much for those kind remarks and for sharing and for having me. I loved it. And I applaud all the great work you're doing. I look forward to doing more together. We'll figure out some other stories we can do together.
That'd be
Sounds
great.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Kelly. Make today
All right.
masterpiece. Thanks, everybody,
Okay.
for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.